to some extent there's a sense of enlightenment, freedom, that people can go everywhere and can settle anywhere. But that's obviously not the case. Everyone needs passports, visa, residence permits, work permits. So there's an enormous legal framework in which migration happens. Now here in Europe, people think that migration happened only in the 1960s. They were all happily living together as Dutch and Germans and French and so on, and then suddenly in the 1960s all kinds of outsiders came in. And now we have to deal with what is called, for example in the Netherlands, the migration problem. Now this is a short-term historical fallacy, because the Dutch were obviously already in the 16th century everywhere else. So what we have discussed before, the expansion of Europe all over the world has brought large groups of people into the orbit of Europe. So people actually in Indonesia, for example, till say 1949, were Dutch. They belonged to Dutch Indonesia. The Indians in India were British. So basically the story that there is only a short time frame in Europe in which migration happens forgets this entire period in which the Europeans in fact moved everywhere else. So if you look at migration figures, the largest group in the world that migrates are the Europeans. So in places like Kenya you have two different kind of, Kenya and Tanzania in Africa, you have two kinds of Indian migration. The older one of the trade communities from say the 15th century, and the new one of the 19th century, which are poor laborers. And they are also from different parts of India. So it has become in the Netherlands, but also in Austria and in France and in Germany, a big political issue. How many people do we actually want to have in our country, and how should they be integrated if we want to have them? And in the Netherlands and in France and in Austria, you had very strong, radical right-wing parties who basically argued France for the French, Holland for the Dutch, and Belgium for the Belgians, I guess, and so on. So they are all anti-immigration parties, and they are populist parties. They basically have only one argument. So these are not covering the entire range of political issues. They are really focused on one issue, like every populist party. Now the second issue has come up, European integration, which is basically about the same, conceptually about the same kind of thing. So how do we keep our Netherlands away from immigration and away from globalization? And immigration is just a part of globalization. So how do we keep the nation pure, happy and wealthy? So there are these interesting play with who belongs, what is foreign, what is inside. To some extent, Chinese find Shanghainese foreign. They are already contaminated with foreigners. And that word contamination, that is a thing which is very Chinese. There's this sense that these barbarians get into our society is still something which is frowned upon and seen as difficult. Now slowly this is changing, because also more and more students go abroad. So you have more and more connection with the outside world. But there are parts of China where they have never seen a foreigner. And of course, the parts of India. When I came for the first time to India, people wanted to touch my face. So whether this was real, you know. So this is so there's a this differential. It's only Shanghai that has a very sizable, maybe up to 500,000 in a city of 22 million, but a sizable, a recognizable foreign presence. And it's interesting to look at China and Korea and all these places, if they get more immigration, what they are going to do, whether they have the same difficulty as Europe with this, or whether they evolve more into the direction of the United States.